Hi, I'm Dustin Abbott. When mirrorless cameras first came out, the idea in many people's minds behind them was that these were going to be smaller, lighter alternatives to DSLRs while providing similar levels of performance and image quality. Of course, as we have seen since that point, that in many cases, lenses designed for at least full-frame mirrorless cameras like the Sony A7R Mark III that I've got here, they have typically been as large and in some cases even larger than the equivalent lenses for DSLRs. But there are a few lenses that fit the original concept of what mirrorless should be, at least for some people, and that is to be a small and light alternative. And if that is you, you're looking for high quality lenses that are going to give you a much smaller form factor than equivalent DSLR, then the Zeiss Loxia lineup of lenses may just be for you, so long as you don't mind manually focusing. Case in point here, and while it's not the same maximum aperture, I have got the Loxia 35mm f2 lens mounted on a full frame Sony A7R Mark III. And here I have the Canon 35mm f1.4L Mark II mounted on a Canon 5D Mark IV. And so yes, the maximum aperture is not exact. However, it would not be incredibly different if I had Canon's 35mm f2 IS or the Tamron 35mm f1.8 VC mounted on the Canon here. As you can see, this certainly fulfills the idea of a smaller, lighter kind of setup. Now, before I break out into individual looks at each one of these lenses, which I'll be doing as a part of this review series, I wanted to just give you a few things as a whole about them. The Loxia lenses, as noted, they are manually focusing lenses. They are made all of metal to, Zeiss's highest grade. I mean, think of these as being equivalent of the Zeiss Milvus lenses, except for in a very, very compact form. All metal construction, weather sealing, all of those things. Now, one thing about the Loxia lenses is that they are designed really with somewhat of a hybrid approach in mind. These are particularly good lenses for filmmakers. And so not only are they fantastic lenses optically for shooting stills, but these really are designed in many ways around the idea of doing actual film work and video work where a quality manual focus lens is often preferred. Let me give you just a couple of the highlights of why that is. Number one, you can get this little tiny tool here that will allow you to, on the actual lens mount, there is a little point where the tool is inserted. And so you can very quickly make the change from either a traditional clicked aperture, where each one of the stops is defined, and there are also 1/3 stops in between the major stops. But you can also then rotate it to the opposite position, and there you can have a declicked aperture that will run through the aperture incredibly smoothly. This is as good as what I've seen. Not surprising. Zeiss does all this stuff very, very, very well. And so you can declick the aperture. For filmmakers, that can be a big deal because you might want to rack aperture or make aperture changes and you don't want to introduce movement. You want it to be very smooth. The other thing that is a part of this process is that Zeiss has designed for these lenses, this is called the Lens Gear Mini. The Lens Gear comes in a variety of sizes, but this is designed to provide a kind of a typical gearing size for those that want to do a focus follow or something similar to where they're going into a geared system. So Zeiss has designed all of these lenses to where this can fit on there and it will give you the standard gearing size. One thing I really like about Zeiss's approach here is that this is a toolless system. There is a ring here at the front that you can kind of grip, and holding the other, you can just rotate this, and what it does is it tightens it down, and so that you can easily get the fit and adapt it to different circumference sizes. And so of course once that is on, you can then have that on a focus follow system, and it's going to help you a lot for filmmaking. And so as you can see, all of these lenses in the series are very compact. Now, there is one new lens that has been introduced. It's a 25mm f2.4 that I don't have on hand. I have the original 4 here, and so that includes a 21mm f2.8. It includes the 35mm f2, a 50mm f2, and then finally an 85mm f2.4, all a part of this series. Now, in this case, these are all actually a part. You can get them as a set for filmmakers that comes in, kind of a Pelican style hard case that is all, kind of custom molded and fitted inside to hold all of these. And so, a very neat kind of way to bring your gear along there. One final thing I want to note before I break out into individual and give you a closer look at each one of these lenses is the fact that because of this compact size, I can actually fit this entire kit in this little Peak Design Everyday 5L bag that can be carried as a shoulder bag or even as a waist bag. And so you can actually have a full frame setup with 4 different lenses in a very compact bag or space like that. Okay, let's take a closer look at the Loxia 50mm f2 lens. And so first of all, we'll take a look at the lens hood itself. As you can see, it is a kind of a standard lens hood, except for this lens hood is all in metal as opposed to plastic like most of them. It has a felt lined kind of flocked interior here that will keep stray light from bouncing around. And really my favorite thing about this lens hood, as with all the Loxia lenses, is that when you reverse it for storage, it really is, you see how tightly it fits along there. It makes it a very compact lens for storing, and it really helps in bringing multiple lenses along with you. And so I really like that aspect of the lens design. Pinch cap here at the front, and so as you can see, this is a planar optical design 50mm f2 lens, and it has, like all of these lenses, it has a 52mm front filter thread. Very handy, of course, and so that you can share filters across the lineup here. Filter threads are, of course, all in metal, as is everything else on this lens. I mean, it is a beautifully made lens. Anodized metal finish, and kind of a satin. You can see both the manual focus ring and the manual aperture ring. They are very finely ribbed, all in metal. This is not going to wear out on you. It is, and look at the damping there. It is just beautiful. You really have to use one of these lenses to just feel how great manual focus can be. And so it just focuses just beautifully there. And as you can see, great damping. The barrel does extend a little bit as you rack through the range there. And at the same time, you've got a nice amount of focus throw there to where you can quickly find what you're looking for. But as you can see here, we've got lots of space all throughout the focal range, and so you can also focus with precision there. Here you'll find all of your distance markings and hyperfocal markings here are all etched into the barrel. Nice to have. Now down here you have that manual aperture ring, and so you have the ability to either use it declicked. I've got this one declicked at the moment, and so what that means is if it is declicked, you can just smoothly move through all of the aperture choices. This is often preferred by those that are doing filmmaking, and so that they can make aperture lenses, and maybe where they start off on a shot where they've got one thing in focus, they can quickly close down the aperture and suddenly they can have a lot more in focus. And so it's a technique that a lot of filmmakers use. And of course, you do have the ability to go back to a traditional clicked aperture by just inserting the tool and rotating this towards this dot right here. And so now you have a traditional aperture with clicks, except for a lot of manual focus lenses, they make bigger jumps. You can maybe go from 2 right to f2.8 or with one click in between. In this case, you get to move in 1/3 stop increments, and so it gives you more finite control over the aperture itself, which of course is very welcome. You can also see that there is a nice thick gasket, part of the premium build of this particular lens. One other thing I do want to point out is that you do have electronic contacts here, and so this lens will of course transmit all of the EXIF type data to the camera. But one other nice thing is that when you start to manually focus, you start to input focus, the moment you do that, it communicates to the camera will magnify the center portion of the frame, and you can move that around. but it will magnify and so that you can more easily visually confirm focus. And I find that to be a really handy thing. Now, of course, these lenses are extremely compact, and in this case, the 50mm f2 is extraordinarily compact, and so it's a pretty wicked combination for being so compact and small there. And if that's a priority for you, obviously that's a huge benefit right there. The lens itself is 2.44 inches in diameter, or 62 millimeters. That's pretty much the case for all of these, and that's, you know, it allows them to share that common filter thread size. That's very handy. The lens itself is only 2.33 inches long. So physically, this is actually identical in the external dimensions to the 35mm f2 lens, the Biogon lens. And so in this case, however, the 50mm f2 is a little bit lighter. It's 320 grams or 11.29 ounces. And so it does have a little bit of heft to it because of all those premium materials. But at the same time, of course, it is still, in an absolute sense, very light. And of course, all of that weight is very close to the camera. Byproduct of that is that your balance is very, very easy. If you're running on a gimbal, for example, it's going to be very, very easy there as well. It is the least complex optical formula here, only 6 elements in 4 groups. And so for those of you that are into more simple optical designs, good news for you there. It can focus down to 45 centimeters, which isn't particularly close. That's 1.48 inches, and, or excuse me, 1.48 feet, about 1.5 feet. And so byproduct of that is that it doesn't have a fantastic reproduction ratio. It's 1 to 7.1 or 0.14 times. And so, you know, pretty pedestrian, but also, you know, not far off what is average for a 50mm lens. One criticism that is the case with almost all of these Loxia lenses is due to the fact that everything here kind of rotates. You've got where you would grip here, you've got a manual focus ring that's moving. Here you've got an aperture ring. The problem is when you go to unmount these lenses. And so if you depress the lens release and you go to try to break the lens free, you really kind of have to grab the whole thing because everything there wants to move. And so, you know, if you're just trying to grab at the front of the lens, you know, you basically have to go through the whole rotation, and even still, you're putting a lot of pressure on it to break it free. And so I would recommend that you do that. I'm not crazy about that, but unfortunately, that's a reality of having such a compact lens. You've got to put everything somewhere. But all told, as you can see, this is a beautifully crafted premium lens. But unfortunately, it also has a premium price. And even though this is the least expensive of the Loxia lineup, it is still about $950 in the US market for it. And so it's not at all inexpensive, but then again, it is also a better built lens, probably with a more premium performance than many of the alternatives you might compare it to. If you'll look in the description down below, I've got an image gallery going, and check back regularly as I'll be adding images to that throughout my review cycle. And you can get a sense of the beautiful color rendition and bokeh and sharpness, all of that great stuff that is always a part of a Zeiss lens review. And of course, you can also find links there to purchase one for yourself if you'd like to. You can follow me on social media. You can become a patron, sign up for my newsletter. And if you haven't already, please click that subscribe button. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.